The movie begins in Kundava, India, in the year 1986. A little boy named Saroo runs into a field filled with yellow butterflies. He hears his older brother, Guddu, calling for him. They run to catch up with a freight train that transports coal. The two brothers manage to board it, with Guddu climbing up as Saroo holds on tightly by the side. As the train moves along, they start stealing coal. Not long after, the two boys go to the market to trade the stolen coal for 2 packets of milk. While waiting, Saroo notices some street vendors cooking jalebi, a local delicacy, and asks his brother to buy some. They begin to dream about owning a shop that makes jalebi. Afterwards, they bring the milk back to their home, where they live with their mother and little sister, Shakila. Their mother pours the milk into bowls and serves them. Saroo, being the sweet and caring boy he is, offers some of his milk to his mother. She then leaves for work, asking Saroo to take care of their little sister. Hours later, Guddu prepares to go to his night job, but Saroo insists on going with him, as their little sister sleeps. Guddu initially refuses, but Saroo starts lifting random heavy objects to prove he can help. Finally, Guddu changes his mind and agrees to bring his little brother along. That night, they travel by train to their destination. Saroo falls asleep in Guddu's arms. When they arrive at their stop, Guddu tries to wake Saroo, but he's too sleepy to get up. Guddu places Saroo on a bench and tells him to wait for his return. Saroo agrees and promptly falls back asleep. Hours later, he wakes up and realizes that his big brother hasn't returned. Alone at the train station, Saroo notices 2 gigantic water tanks in front of him. He calls out for his brother, but there is no response. Saroo begins walking and finds himself on an empty train, continuing his search for Guddu. He falls asleep in one of the compartments. Sometime later, Saroo wakes up and discovers the train is moving, and the doors are locked. He tries to scream for his big brother, but no one hears him. At a train stop, Saroo calls for help from people outside, but no one understands what he's saying. Several days later, the train arrives in Kolkata, hundreds of miles away from where he originally boarded. He doesn't speak the local Bengali language, but still tries to find his way back to his brother. At a ticket counter, Saroo attempts to buy a ticket home, but the attendant doesn't recognize the name of his village, as the 5-year-old repeatedly says, "Ganestale." Older people at the counter push him aside. Lost, alone and hungry, Saroo finds a faucet and drinks tap water. He sees a little girl, also lost, drinking from the faucet, and follows her back to the station. There, Saroo sees a group of street children lying on cardboard boxes. He sits on the opposite side and stares at them. One boy notices Saroo and places a cardboard box next to him. Saroo smiles at the kind gesture and goes over to lie next to him. As they face each other, Saroo closes his eyes and falls asleep. Not long after, Saroo is startled awake by the sounds of screaming children. He sees a group of men attempting to kidnap the children, forcing him to run. Saroo escapes through a gate that is half closed as a police officer watches, smoking and doing nothing. He continues running for his life until he reaches a bridge. Underneath the bridge, Saroo finds a place lit with candles. He goes there and sees people fast asleep. He approaches a statue of Durga, a Hindu goddess, and prays. Afterward, he takes a few pieces of food from the offerings, eats behind the statue, and falls asleep. Saroo is woken by the sounds of people praying and chanting near the statue of Durga. He returns to the station where he saw the street children and retrieves his cardboard box. As he continues to wander around the city, he encounters Noor, a seemingly friendly woman who notices he only speaks Hindi. Noor takes Saroo back to her apartment, where she feeds, bathes, and clothes him. That night, Noor tells Saroo that a man named Rama will help him find his way home. She cuddles with Saroo and puts him to sleep. The next morning, Saroo wakes up to find Rama, a strange man who inspects him briefly. Rama tells Noor that Saroo is exactly what they're looking for. Sensing something sinister, Saroo realizes their intentions aren't good and manages to escape, with Noor chasing after him. Saroo finds his way to the Howrah Bridge and lives under it for 2 months. One day, a young man notices Saroo from inside a restaurant. He realizes Saroo is mimicking his actions as he eats. The young man goes outside and tries to talk to Saroo, understanding he's lost. He then takes Saroo to the police and explains the boy's situation. Unable to trace his family, the police take a picture of Saroo and place him in an orphanage. The orphanage houses hundreds of children, and there Saroo meets a little girl who tells him it's not a good place. 3 months later, Saroo meets Mrs. Sood, who informs him that she's placed advertisements about him in several local newspapers, but no one has responded. Mrs. Sood tells Saroo that an Australian couple is interested in adopting him. She shows him pictures of the couple, Sue and John Brierley, and tells him they live in Tasmania, Australia. She hands Saroo a picture of the couple for him to keep, and begins teaching Saroo and other children basic English to help them adjust. Soon after, Saroo boards a plane to Hobart, Tasmania. There, he meets the loving Australian couple, who introduce themselves as his parents and give him a stuffed koala. Saroo is overwhelmed by the culture shock of being in a completely different place, but slowly begins to settle into his new life. Sue and John teach him many things, including how to play cricket. A year later, Sue, John, and Saroo wait for another boy to arrive. Saroo shows his parents a drawing he made of the 3 of them. They meet Muntosh, who receives a stuffed kangaroo doll and Saroo's drawing. However, Muntosh struggles to adjust to his new home, suffering from rage and self-harm. Sue finds it heartbreaking to see Muntosh having trouble adapting. One night, Saroo wakes up to find Sue crying. He goes to comfort her, and she tells him how blessed she feels to have Saroo in her life. 20 years later, Saroo is a young man. He meets with his parents at a restaurant, discussing his plans to move to Melbourne to study hotel management. Muntosh, unable to live up to his brother's achievements, doesn't attend the gathering. A heated argument breaks out between Sue and Saroo during the meal. Later, Saroo visits Muntosh at his home and warns him to stop being a source of worry for their mother, as Muntosh's actions continue to trouble Sue. Muntosh speaks condescendingly to Saroo, but Saroo brushes it off and continues to warn his brother. In Melbourne, Saroo meets an American student named Lucy. They develop a connection and eventually start a romantic relationship. One day, they visit their Indian friends for a meal together. Saroo volunteers to get more beer from the kitchen for his friends and girlfriend. While in the kitchen, he spots a plate of jalebi, which triggers a flashback of his brother in the market in India, talking about getting jalebis. Moved by the memory, Saroo reveals to his friends that he is not actually from Calcutta and that he has been lost for over 20 years. The group gathers in the living room as Saroo shares his story of how he got lost 2 decades ago. His friends suggest using Google Earth to search for his hometown in India. Saroo begins his search, calculating how far he might have traveled from his hometown to Calcutta. 2 years later, Saroo is still tirelessly searching, determined to find his family. One night, Saroo and Lucy visit his adoptive parents for dinner. As Lucy is about to tell Saroo's parents about his search, Saroo stops her, not wanting them to know what he is doing for fear of disappointing them. The dinner turns awkward, and Muntosh worsens the situation by condescending to his brother again. In response, Saroo insults Muntosh in front of everyone. Muntosh, still unable to cope with his own struggles, starts hitting himself and tries to attack Saroo, but their father intervenes. Over time, Saroo becomes more distant from Lucy. He feels overwhelmed by the thought of what his biological family must have gone through when he disappeared. Feeling that Lucy deserves better, Saroo ends their relationship. Months pass, and Saroo is still far from finding his hometown. One day, while riding an escalator, he runs into Lucy. They catch up, and Lucy tells him that his adoptive mother's health is deteriorating. Saroo visits Sue and learns that she was not infertile. Sue opens up about her childhood and explains that she and John chose adoption because they believed in helping others in need. She tells Saroo that they felt there were already too many people on Earth, which changes how Saroo sees Muntosh. Realizing the importance of forgiveness, Saroo decides to visit Muntosh and apologize. One evening, as Saroo continues his search on Google Earth, he extends the search radius, going farther than he initially thought. He spots a section of the map just past the line, and suddenly has a flashback of himself running through the fields as a child. He remembers the meadow filled with yellow butterflies. As he continues scanning, he recognizes the paths he used to run along on his way home. Memories flood back as he examines the area further and realizes that he has found the place where he lived. He discovers a neighborhood just outside the Khandava district called Ganesh Talai and realizes it's his hometown. Saroo feels a deep sense of comfort as he recalls the exact turns leading to his old home. Early the next morning, he visits Lucy and tells her the exciting news that he has found his home. Lucy is ecstatic and hugs Saroo in celebration. Saroo asks her to wait for him as he plans his trip to India to visit his hometown. Soon after, Saroo invites his adoptive parents to his flat and shows them the maps posted on his board. He finally opens up to his adoptive mother about his search. She expresses her full support, hoping that Saroo will find his hometown and show his birth family that he is safe and has grown into the man he is today. Saroo flies back to Khandava, India, and checks into a hotel. He takes a walk, retracing the tracks he used to run as a child. Along the way, he experiences vivid flashbacks of familiar places. He eventually reaches Ganesh Talai and makes his way to his old home. To his dismay, he finds that his old home has been turned into a makeshift barn for goats. Devastated, he begins to lose hope. A woman carrying a baby notices him, but when Saroo tries to speak in English, she doesn't understand. A local man who speaks English steps in, noticing Saroo's struggle to communicate. Saroo shows the man a picture of himself at 5 years old and explains that he used to live there. The man tells him to follow, leading Saroo to his biological mother. Overcome with emotion, Saroo walks up to his mother. She instantly recognizes her son, and they share a deeply emotional reunion. Saroo then asks about his older brother, Guddu, and learns the heartbreaking news that Guddu is no longer alive. He also reunites with his biological sister, now all grown up and beautiful, and becomes emotional seeing her. Saroo learns that his mother never gave up hope and refused to leave the village, always believing that one day her missing son would return home. Saroo calls his adoptive parents upon returning to his hotel. He updates them on his safe arrival in India and his reunion with his biological family. He expresses his gratitude to Sue, explaining that his biological mother deeply appreciates the care she has provided. Saroo reassures his adoptive family that, despite everything, his relationship with them remains unchanged. He tells them how much he loves them, including Muntosh. The movie concludes with captions about the real Saroo and his return to Ganesh Talai in Kundava, India, in February 2012. Thank you for watching.